Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Brian's Horror Corner, and welcome to this horror franchise movie review video as part of my current January 2024 series, where I'm taking a look at the entire Omen franchise that I have the Scream Factory box set for. So today we're going to take a look at the third and final sequel, at least existing sequel for the Omen franchise, and that is from 1991, Omen IV: The Awakening. So yeah, just like the previous two movies, this is a first-time watch for me. Didn't know anything about this movie before, never saw any of it before. So yeah, Omen IV: The Awakening, the made-for-TV 1991 sequel. Let's just go ahead and get into it here. So Omen IV: The Awakening is a 1991 American supernatural horror television film directed by George Montesi and Dominic Othean Gerard, and written by Brian Taggart, from a story by producer Harvey Bernhard and Taggart. The film is the fourth installment in the Omen series and is the final installment in the original series. The plot follows two attorneys who adopt a young girl, unaware of the fact that she is possibly to succeed Damien Thorne as the Antichrist. So basically, the movie opens with this Virginia Congressman, Gene York, and his attorney wife, Karen. They tried to have children numerous times without success, so they end up going to this nun orphanage where they adopt a child that's named Delia from a nun named Sister Yvonne. And then, of course, kind of like Damien in the first movie, and I'll get in more into that. Basically, weird stuff starts happening around this child to other people around the family and stuff like that. So the movie kind of goes on from there, and it has some twists and turns, especially in the third act. So that's kind of the setup, the premise, and the idea of this movie. As far as the cast goes, we have Faye Grant as Karen York, Michael Woods as Gene York, Asia Viria as Delia York, Madison Mason as Dr. Alice Hastings, Ann Heem as Joe, Thoson, Jim Burns as Noah, Don S. Davis as Jake Madison, and Megan Leach as Sister Yvonne / Felicity. So that's to set up the premise and the cast for the 1991 made-for-TV Omen sequel, Omen IV: The Awakening. Yeah, this movie doesn't need to exist. It really doesn't. It's pretty bad, man. It really is. And I had a hard time trying to find pros for this movie, but I did find a couple, so let's just go ahead and get into them here. I will say that it does hold pretty consistent with the other Omen themes, like Rottweilers protecting the Antichrist type of children, Satanists surrounding the evil child, and Omen type deaths. So it's good to see and have that consistency throughout all the movies, the first four Omen movies. And this one kind of does hold consistent in that regard with those themes. So as someone like me that's kind of a stickler for continuity and things like that, I was glad to at least see that this didn't exist on a different planet, in a different universe where the other movies never happened or anything. So that's number one. The movie definitely tries some different type of things with story and twists, mostly in the third act, and to varying degrees of success. But I give it credit for the fact that it is different. It does have some different aspects, especially with some of those third act reveals. So got to give it credit for that. The tie back to Damien at the end of the movie was interesting, if not weird. But it's good to go back to the roots of who started and made this whole thing happen. So again, I give him credit for that. And then I thought the acting, especially for a made-for-TV horror film, was pretty passable. Nothing exceptional, but it was decent for being a made-for-TV horror movie. I have seen worse, especially by Asia Viria, however you pronounce the actress's name that played Delia, the young girl. I thought she was fine, especially for a child actor in a made-for-TV movie. Again, your expectations have to start a little bit lower when you see that it's a made-for-TV movie, and you also you have lower expectations typically because you know the production and the budget and everything's going to be much lower. So yeah, those are my pros for Omen IV: The Awakening. As you can see, I kind of had to stretch a little bit there to try to find some things that were positive for this movie. Um, as far as the cons goes, the biggest one is this movie has no purpose to exist. You know, as many problems as I had with the third movie and even the second movie to a certain extent, at least it was still a nice little trilogy. I mean, they focused on Damien Thorne at different points of his life, from being a child to a teenager to a grown man, and it had sort of a nice bow on it and a nice trilogy. I thought, even though, as I said, especially in the third movie, there were some things that didn't work for me, and I would have gone in a different direction. But this movie's just an add-on. This is using the name, exploiting the name for money or prestige, whatever you want to say. And it's just the story doesn't add anything. It doesn't serve any purpose. It's a complete non-factor. There's no reason for this movie to exist other than exploiting the franchise's name and try to rehash a similar story of the first movie, which obviously was done much better. But that's the first 2/3 of this movie are generally a rehash of the first movie, where you have this couple who can't have kids and they end up adopting. Or I guess in the case of the first movie, they could have a kid, but the kid ends up dying, and so they adopt a child of a woman who ends up dying at the same time, basically. But I mean, other than that, it's a lot. They have this nanny that comes in, and with a few little change ups here and there, it's essentially the first movie, at least for the first 2/3 of this movie. So there's really nothing original or interesting about it. The made-for-TV aspects of this movie are really felt when you watch this, especially after you watch the three before it, which were theatrical releases. It's very basic, and at times, between the music and the score, the production, the average at best camera work, the very TV made for movie, and not in a good way. There are some made for TV movies that are good, I would say, like Psycho 4 and what's the one from the early 80s with the Scarecrow? Dark Knight of Scarecrow. I just have to say the name of the object, I guess. But so there are some good ones out there that go above and beyond a typical TV movie, but this is not one of them, quite frankly. So again, I lowered my expectations ahead of time, knowing that it was a made-for-TV movie. But even with that, I still didn't enjoy it. The first 2/3 of this movie, like I said, is basically a carbon copy of the original Omen movie. A couple, one involved in politics, adopts a small child where weird events takes place around them. Nothing very original or interesting for the majority of the movie. The pacing of this movie is terrible. It's hard to stay engaged throughout because, as a viewer, just not invested in the story, especially when we've seen it done much better with a much higher quality before. There's a lot of reveals and twists towards the end of this movie that I think they try to bank on a little bit. And they only somewhat work. There's one part that surprised me a little bit. I'll give them that much credit. I'll give the film that much credit. But the rest of them are either really like out there, hard to grasp, hard to sort of go with. It kind of has more of a really kind of feel once these twists and reveals are given in the third act. That's kind of the reaction that I had. It's just really hard to stomach. So yeah, a lot of the twists and those type of aspects really didn't work for me. Just not that well done. It almost feels like they were more tacked on just to be different. And then finally, the death scenes of this movie and the execution of them are pretty laughable. Obviously, you're not going to get on-screen deaths that have a lot of gore in it because it is a made-for-TV movie. I think it was made for Fox back when it was Fox 29. Back in like the late 80s, early 90s, when Fox really wasn't, it was still a fledgling TV network. But obviously, you weren't going to get anything overly gruesome in the deaths. But more than that, the deaths they do have on screen are laughable and with characters' reactions. Like there's a construction death that a private investigator has towards the end of the film, where it's like slow motion. He has to hold the pose of like, as this wrecking ball is basically coming through this trailer before it hits them, and it's like, really? I mean, come on, man! It's absurd. I mean, it's absolutely absurd. So, Yeah, I don't know, guys. That's about all I have for my review on this movie. I could probably find more cons. I'm not sure I could find more pros. I think this is the weakest Omen movie so far. And from a lot of the other reviews that I've checked out, I'm not the only one in that boat. That doesn't sound like, not that that matters, but I'm going to give this movie a 5.5 out of 10. It's just not, the story is not interesting. The production value and everything, the cinematography is all so much less than the first three movies. But the biggest thing is this movie just has no reason to exist. That's really the biggest reason why I'm giving it a 5.5 out of 10. It just exploited the franchise name of Omen and tried to do something weird with it that didn't work really on any level. So 5.5 out of 10 for Omen 4: The Awakening. Um, I'll show you the back here. I'm not really sure why. It does have a couple of special features. I haven't really watched any of the special features on any of these movies yet. Maybe I'll do that at the end of the month before I do my ranking video for this franchise. But yeah, that's pretty much about it. 5.5 out of 10 for Omen IV: The Awakening. Go ahead and comment down below what you guys think of Omen IV: The Awakening. Do you like it more than I do, about the same, or even less? Why not? Please like this video, hit the little notification bell down below so you don't miss any of my upcoming reviews for this franchise, this series. And please be sure to subscribe to my channel as well so you don't miss any of my great horror content, not only the rest of this series, but what I have coming up pretty much the rest of this year. Frankly, I just have so many ideas and so much great horror content for you guys. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of that. But with that being said, I hope you're enjoying this review series, that you enjoyed this individual review. But as always, stay scared. Bye.